Welcome to End Times Events for Firstfruits. This is a closer view. God's 7 annual holy periods highlight events. Prepared by Father and Son team George and Dana Brown. Now, these holy periods are in addition to 1. The weekly Sabbaths, that's Friday night to Saturday night, sundown to sundown, and 2. The monthly new moons, new moon fast days that mark the beginning of each month. After 2 days, the 7th millennial day. After 2 days, it's the 3rd day from the 5 BC birth of Jesus Christ. So days 3 and 7, 6001 to 7000 are the same. After 2 days, well, the 2 days are obvious. After 2 days will he revive us. In the 3rd day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. That's Hosea 6 verse 2. See verses 1 to 3. Exodus 19 verses 11 to 19 speaks of events in the 3rd day. So back in the beginning now, that's 0, creation. That's 4005 BC. You have 6 days until the turning point in the 7th day of the week. Or from 5 BC, you have 3 days and a half day. The half day is the first half of the 4th day. It's the same as the beginning of the 8th day. These are 1,000-year days. The fundamental hour. For in 1 hour is thy judgment come. Revelation 18:10. Now lesser saints have their hours too. Revelation 18:17 and verse 19. Now see 18:21 to 24 for the tares. It's not such a nice approach for the tares. Okay, 1 hour of a 1,000-year day equals 124 times 1,000, which equals 41.67, and rounded to 42 years. 1 hour, 6 times 7 equals 42 years. The firstfruits hour, the firstfruits 42-year hour. Okay, now 4 years before the hour began, we have the chief human shepherd anointed in the spring of 1978 AD. So we have 4 years, and then 1982, the beginning of sorrows, and the beginning of the firstfruits 42-year hour. So we have the turning point in 1996 AD. That's the joint between 6000 and 6001 from creation. In the spring of 2010 AD is when salvation is shut off for 1,000 years. Then 6022 from creation, the year of the solemn assembly. Okay, now we show here the beginning of sorrows, which ends in 2017 AD as the beginning of the solemn assembly, 6022. So we have it divided up into 14 preparation years and 21-year half-hour wait described in Revelation 8:1. Preparation years in Daniel 12:4, in Exodus 12:6, Nahum 2:3 and 4, and Leviticus 23 verse 5. God's 7 annual holy periods. Leviticus 23, 1 to 44, and Numbers 28, 1 through 29, 39. So you see God's 7 annual holy periods set forth, and it lays out primarily the schedule there in Leviticus and Numbers. God's 7 annual holy periods by months. So we have the 1st, 3rd, and 7th biblical months. Even Paul proclaims that holy periods are shadows of things to come. Colossians 2:16 and 17. They are happening today. Now, observe the sequence. 1, 10, 14, 15 to 21, and 22. I repeat that, it's very important. 1, 10, 14, 15 to 21, and 22. The first and third months, we have the new moon, 1, and then the separation of the lambs. It's not a holy day, but it's a very important day. It's on the 10th, and the 14th is Passover. That's when the proclamation of liberty is proclaimed. And week of unleavened bread, 15 through 21, comes directly after Passover. So that's a Sabbath, 7 days. And one Pentecost comes immediately after the Sabbath of unleavened bread. That's the 22. And 50 Pentecost is on about 12 Sivan. Okay, the third month. Okay, the first month there is called Abib. It's the first month. It's roughly 30 days, 29, 30. And the third month is Sivan. The harvest is over before the 15th day of the 7th month. Note that again. Before the 15th day of the 7th month, the harvest is over. Quote, also, in the 15th day of the 7th month, when ye have gathered in the fruit of the land. So that's Leviticus 23:39. It prefigures the 15th year of the 7th millennium, after the harvest is gathered. The 7th month now, we see 1 is the trumpets, the fast of the trumpets, the 7th new moon. Atonement is on the 10th. The week of tabernacles is the 15th through 21st. The 14 is missing here, but we'll explain that a little later. And solemn assembly on the 22nd. So this is 30 days here now, Ethanim, the 7th month. Each day is as a year in prophecy. Numbers 14:34 and Ezekiel 4 verse 6. Now, step 1, laying out the schedule. Firstfruits 42-year hour schedule is defined by holy periods of the 1st, 3rd, and 7th month. Now again, observe the sequence: 1, 10, 14, 15 to 21, and 22. Never forget that sequence. Okay, here we go again. Now the first month, now these are years. The new moon is the first year. The separation of the lambs is the 10th year. Passover is the 14th year. The week of unleavened bread follows directly after Passover. There's 15 through 21st years. And one Pentecost is the 22nd year. Whereas the 50th year is not on here, but it's the 50 days of Pentecost. The 50th day shows up on the solemn assembly. Now let's look at the 7th month as years. The first is the Fast of Trumpets. The 10th is Atonement. There's no 14 here now, but we'll explain that later. And the 15th through 21st is the Week of Tabernacles. Tabernacles involves a week of living in booths. That's temporary shelters. The years ahead, why, we have 7 years of tabernacles, dwelling in temporary shelters. The 22nd is the solemn assembly. Note, 21st of tabernacles, not a holy day. Note, there are 2 Passovers, each on 14. If you don't keep the first, you shall keep the second. Numbers 9, verses 10 and 11. Okay, step 2 now, laying out the schedule. Here we crank in Daniel's years. Oh, interesting. Daniel's years plus moving the dial 15 years on the 7th millennium. Hezekiah's extension. Hezekiah got a 15-year extension. Isaiah 38, verses 5 and 8. So again, read, the harvest is over before the 15th day of the 7th month. Also in the 15th day of the 7th month, when ye have gathered in the fruit of the land, that's Leviticus 23:39, prefigures the 15th year of the 7th millennium, after the harvest is gathered. Holy periods prefigure events now ongoing regarding the harvest of firstfruits. Hezekiah's 15-year extension shall be a sign from the Lord. Isaiah 38, verse 7. Moving the dial 15 years is based on King Hezekiah's 15-year extension on life. So Isaiah 38, 5 and 8. And the 50th day of Pentecost actually symbolizes both the firstfruits now ongoing and the main harvest 1,000 years into the future. Okay, all humanity has been given a 15-year extension. Isaiah 38, verse 7. People need to wake up, because if they don't, read on. The 4th month symbolizes the 4th millennia from the 5 BC birth of Jesus. This 4th day, Tammuz, Ezekiel 8, verse 14, is the same as the 8th day from creation, 1,000 years into the future. Review a little bit again now. We begin the first month. These are years now. The first fruits, 42-year hour. So we have the new moon on the 1st, the separation of the lambs on the 10th, Passover the 14th, and a week of unleavened bread 15 through 21, and one Pentecost, the 22nd year of the first fruits, 42-year hour. And 50 Pentecost matches up with the solemn assembly. Now we'll show down here the 7th month. Again in years now, the beginning of the 7th millennium, right here. In the year 6000 has ended, 6001 begins at this point. This is the turning point in the spring of 1996 AD. So we have the Fast of Trumpets in the first year. The 10th year is Atonement year. It was Atonement year. It's all over now. And the 15th to the 21st is the week of Tabernacles. There's nothing to celebrate on the 21st. And note that Passover is missing again on the 14th. And the 22nd is the year of the Solemn Assembly. Okay, now we're moving at 15 years. So remember, we started back at the beginning of the 42-year hour. Now we have a second presentation. We have the new moon matches up with the trumpets on the 1st. On the 10th, the separation of the lambs matches up with Atonement year, the 10th. But here we've got a second Passover, Numbers 9, verses 10 and 11. That's on the 14th. But there's nothing that matches up with here. But we'll show you how it matches in a few minutes here. Okay, now the week of unleavened bread, the 15th through the 21st. That's when Jesus resurrected on the 15th. Okay, so the week of Tabernacles is the 15th through the 21st also, but there's nothing to celebrate. So we have another void here on the 21st year. The 22nd year, of course, is one Pentecost and the Solemn Assembly. So we complete 120 Jubilees, the turning points, in the spring of 1996 AD. That's the year 6000 from creation. Now see how they all line up. All the holy days line up now, except for Passover on the 14th and the 21st of the week of unleavened bread. And the 21st of Tabernacles is nothing there. So these two vacant voids, I will fill them in right now. We'll bring in Daniel's 70 years. We have Daniel 70 years in Daniel 9 verse 2 speaks of 70 years. 24 speaks of 70 weeks or 70 years. 25 speaks of 69 years, and verse 26 speaks of 62. Now these all line up. They fill in the vacancies here. So we have 1, 10, 14, 15 to 21, and 22. So you can see how they all line up here now in purple. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, now before the seventh seal began, the seal of the living God came upon the firstfruits. If you read Revelations, now you see that Passover year, 1995 to 96, spring to spring, was the Passover year. And on Passover year, we have the seal of the living God upon the firstfruits and the proclamation of liberty. Of course, Satan didn't allow his captives to be freed. Okay, so we have the seventh seal began right there at the end of the year 6000. So we have the seven seals in 6-1 through 17, the first 14 years. Okay, now we have the turning point in the spring of 1996 AD right there. And multitudes are passed over for entry into the firstfruits. Revelation 7 verses 1 to 8 speaks of the seven seals being bestowed upon the firstfruits. 8:1 speaks of the half hour, the seventh seal. And 9:4 says, hurt not those that are sealed. 14:1 to 5 speaks of 144 being with Jesus Christ, the Word of God. Okay, now the beginning of sorrows. Leviticus 26:14 to 33 speaks of these tribulations. Revelation 6:1 through 16:21 also speaks of these tribulations. And Ezekiel 14 verses 12 to 21 speaks of these tribulations, the beginning of sorrows, the opening of the seven seals. So if you watch the seven seals, of course we have the 14 years, preparation years, and Revelation 8:1 again, a half hour, and a 21-year pause, and solemn assembly over here in the end, 60:22. And of course, note down below, we have tribulations resume, the opening of the seven seals. Watch the seventh seal now. There we go, the sounding of the seven trumpets begins. So, and they all extend right to the end of the 35-year period, the 5 sevens of 35. So the end of the 35. Now watch the seven trumpets, the seventh trump. Watch that seventh trump again. There you go. The voices of the seven thunders now. The seven thunders, very, very important. And for the seventh thunder, of course, Jesus is with the 144,000. Revelation 14, verses 1 to 5. Verse 6 speaks of the first thunder. Okay, watch the seventh thunder now. Here we go. The seven plagues are poured out. And that's what we're talking about. The year 2010 AD. So the firstfruits enter the eternal kingdom following a second Passover. Numbers 9, verse 10 and 11. Could the great cry, Exodus 11:6, be speaking about today? Wailing and gnashing of teeth has been promised. Today, the earth's population is as the dust of the earth. There's never been the numbers of people on earth as there is today. So when everybody is crying because they did not make it, there will indeed be a great cry, such as there never was nor never will be again. So now, let's see how the firstfruits end times fit together. Matthew 8:11 and 12, and Exodus 11:6, and chapter 12, verses 29 and 30. And 29 and 30 are rather interesting. And it came to pass that at midnight the Lord smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. And Egypt represents this world. From the firstborn of Pharaoh, Pharaoh is the world ruler, represents the world ruler, that sat on his throne, unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants, and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt. There was not a house where there was not one dead. In Exodus 12, verses 29 and 30. Okay, we have the second Passover on the 14th, and the 22nd year we have one Pentecost, the solemn assembly. One unleavened bread is on the 15th, and the 7 UB is on the 21st. The wrath of God is poured out. The 7 plagues are added. This is the week of unleavened bread now, and the week of tabernacles. So one tabernacles is on the 15th. There's no celebration on the 21st. But there's plenty to celebrate on the 15th. This is the betrothal of the firstfruits. Betrothal goes down to the solemn assembly. Solemn assembly, the betrothal is made permanent. Marriage is consummated. Okay, now Daniel's 70 years. The 62nd year comes on the 14th. And the 69th year fills in on the 21st. And the 70th year is the glorious solemn assembly, spring to spring. Daniel's 70 years. Daniel's 70 years began in the spring of 1948 and extend unto 2018, spring to spring. The glorious solemn assembly is still here with us on the 22nd. So Daniel's 70 years here now, Daniel 9:2, 24 to 26. Now note the years, 2009, 2010 are the 14th year. They bracket the 14th year. And 2010, 2011 brackets the 15th year. And 2017 at the other end now. And 2018 they bracket the 70th year. The year of the solemn assembly. So let's see what's going on here now. The saints, the dead saints, were resurrected at 3 p.m. on the 14th. That's when Jesus was crucified and died on Passover, the 14th. That's Matthew 27, 50 to 53, 3 p.m. That would be the middle of the 11th month if we move things as years. Between the 14th and 15th. That's the end of the year 6014. Salvation's closed for 1,000 years. Revelation 20 verses 4 to 6 speaks of the 1,000 years. Daniel 9:2 and 26 speaks of the Messiah being cut off, but not for his own people. There's the end of the year 62, Daniel's 62nd year, out of Daniel's 70 years. Okay, now let's see. Jesus reappeared 4 times on 1 UB. That's the 15th. All right, now the 15th, Jesus reappeared. He was in the grave only about 14 and a half hours. 3 days and 3 nights associated with Jesus' death began when Caiaphas, the high priest, plotted in the night through Passover unto one unleavened bread when Jesus resurrected on 1 UB. This period involves 3 days and nights. So he reappeared to the women twice. The first time he said, "Don't touch me, I've got to appear before our Father." And then he came back again and the women touched him. They washed his feet and so forth. All right, now, another important point here is that when Jesus left, why the women were told to tell his apostles to meet him in Galilee. To meet Jesus in Galilee. So he met the apostles first that evening in the temple. The apostles were there with the disciples. but in between now, he walked to Emmaus with 2 disciples. And they came running back to Jerusalem to say that they saw Jesus, the resurrected Jesus. Okay, so Jesus reappeared on 7 UB, the 21st day of the month. So it's the 21st year. Jesus reappeared on 7 unleavened bread. And he spoke to the disciples in the temple, observing 7 UB. So his apostles weren't there. His apostles were in Galilee. It's more than 100 miles north of Jerusalem. So it took them most of the week to get up there. The next day, Jesus reappeared on one Pentecost to the apostles in Galilee, in Tiberias of Galilee. And they had been out fishing all night, which is a no-no because they're working on a holy day. So that's Peter for you. That's one of Peter's problems. Okay, so on one Pentecost, Jesus saw the apostles there fishing, and he went there and spoke to them. They weren't sure who he was, and they said they were fishing all night and they didn't catch anything. So Jesus said, well, cast your net out on the right side of the boat. And so they cast the net out on the right side, and they caught 153 fish. And they did not break the net when they hauled it in. Amazing. 153 is a very important number. You see that in 2 Kings 1, verses 9, 11, and 13. I have one captain, and they're 50. And another captain, and they're 50. And a third captain, and they're 50. So 3 captains and 3 50s add up to 153. Now this 153, what is it? We have 153 jubilees until the end of the Great Regeneration. So we have 120 jubilees till the turning point, and 120 from 153 leaves you 33 jubilees till the end of the Great Regeneration. Okay, so let's see what happens here now. The Messiah returns in Daniel's 70th year, after the tribulations of those days. So we have the end of the tribulations in 2017, the spring of 2017. It's just before the Glorious Solemn Assembly begins. Now the Glorious Solemn Assembly, Zephaniah 3, verses 14 to 20 speak of that. And 3 verse 18 says the gathering is for the solemn assembly. So now, again, will the resurrection of the saints occur before the spring of 2010 AD, during the second Passover year? Think about it again. It's right here. It's between 2009 and 2010, spring to spring. So the 2009 is here. We're not quite at the spring yet, but it's coming real soon. Okay, the second Passover, departing Egypt. Remember this day. Moses told the people to remember this day. Exodus 13:3. It was the 15th of Abib. Salvation closes 2010, spring of 2010. We have the second Passover on the 14th. And departing Egypt now on the 15th. And they departed in the first month, on the 15th day of the month, on the morrow after the Passover. The children of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians. Numbers 33:3. Gathering is for the solemn assembly. Zephaniah 3:18. Now, you see where the solemn assembly is. So we have a review now. Passover year, the 120th Jubilee, the turning point, and the second Passover, Numbers 9, 10, and 11. So we have missing 14 in here now. We have the spring of 1995, beginning of Passover year, the 120th Jubilee now. 15 years, 15-year reprieve. That all humanity has been given a 15-year extension till the spring of 2010 AD. And they either get their act straight or they're going to lose out. And there's only a little flock. There's too many scoffers today, scoffing at the word because they don't believe it. Beginning of sorrows was the 35 years of previous of millennial tribulations. And you've seen the floods and the fires and the earthquakes and the hurricanes and the oppression, the wars and all that. You've seen them so far. The turning point began back in the end of the year 6000 from creation. 21-year half-hour wait, that's Revelation 8:1, until the beginning of the solemn assembly in the year 6022 from creation. So you see, the first fruits 42-year hour is laden with material that explains what's happening. Okay, after Daniel's 62nd year, after 62 shall Messiah be cut off. Daniel 9:2 and 26. That's the spring of 2010 AD. The door to salvation closes for 1,000 years. Revelation 20:4-6. So wake up, folks. Will Passover reoccur? That's number 14. Missing 14 is here. Spring 2009, spring 2010 AD. We're living in it. All right, now, one down below, the first arrow, red arrow, Passover occurred at midnight when the firstborn were stricken on the 14th day of the first month. Exodus 12:12-14, and verse 24, and 29, and 30. Okay, now, if you don't keep the first Passover, you keep the second Passover. So keeping Passover on the second month, if you miss the first, that's the second arrow there, number 2. But now when we equate everything to years now, instead of days, we have midnight of Passover year in the third month. That's item 3 on here. These are biblical months on the bottom. So you see it's divided up into 4 sections of 3 months each. And 3 p.m. when Jesus died, the saints were resurrected. That would be the middle of the 11th month. So we see how Passover year may occur. The end of the third month, the biblical month, and the midst of the 11th month. Take a good look at this now. Responsibility to warn others. Quote, "When I say unto the wicked, thou shalt surely die, and thou givest him not warning, nor speakest to warn the wicked from his wicked way, to save his life, the same wicked man shall die in his iniquity. But his blood will I require at thine hand." So if your neighbor is the wicked man or the disobedient person, Ezekiel 3:18 speaks loud and clear. Their blood will be at thine hand. You don't warn them. Okay, the betrothal. We've spoken of the betrothal quite frequently here. The first fruits are betrothed until the solemn assembly. So a betrothal is a temporary marriage, a conditional marriage. You got to get your act straight during this period of time. A betrothal may last 7 years. Now, a virgin bride is as married to her husband and must remain faithful to her husband. It's a conditional marriage. The groom has 3 options. Well, women don't like this, huh? Women's lib. The groom has 3 options. Exodus 21, verse 7-11. 1, he may set her free, reject her at any time. 2, he may make the marriage permanent. 3, he may give her to his son, no one else. A betrothed virgin is automatically free after 7 years if the groom does nothing. Right? And historic betrothal. Anyone may betroth their daughter to a groom. The groom has 3 options. Remember, Abraham sent his servant. Now, it wasn't Abraham, or it wasn't his son Isaac. Abraham sent his servant to Haran to find a wife for Isaac. The servant then brought the betrothed bride to Isaac. The bride was already married, but she wasn't married to the servant. She was married to Isaac, and Isaac hadn't even seen her. Okay, now once the agreement was made, the bride may not break the betrothal. It is not her option. Should she do it, she may not enter the eternal kingdom as a saint. See Genesis 24, 1-67. Now, today we have the engagement where the women can do anything they want. Strictly unbiblical. Firstfruits are betrothed to God forever. He then gives the betrothed bride unto his Son, Jesus Christ. The betrothal continues unto the glorious solemn assembly when the marriage is consummated. Hosea 2, 19 and 20. Now, notice again, you're betrothed to God first, and then he gives the betrothed bride to his Son. So you're betrothed to God forever. When you're married to his Son, you're as a daughter to God.